Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to our second ever skills lab today on Canvas Studio. I think I can speak for all of us when I say we're very excited to talk about this wonderful tool and all that it can do. So awesome. Thank you. Peg just got the slides up and running. So I'll just first start by introducing myself. I think I know all of you, but I'm Laura. I'm an instructional designer with CTEI, and I've been here for 2 years now. Peg?
Okay, yeah, I'm Peg Checky. I've also been here with CTEI at Rush for coming up on 5 years, believe it or not. I can't really wrap my head around that. It's gone so quickly. But yeah, another instructional designer and happy to be here.
And I'm Daniel Martin. I'm a relatively new member of the team. I'm just coming up on a month. I'm an instructional technologist, and I'm also kind of a new introductee to Canvas Studio as well. So I'm kind of excited to share my excitement with this tool as well.
Okay, and today what we're talking about, clearly you all know we're talking about Canvas Studio. We're going to talk a lot about, how to use the tool, first of all, but also when to use the tool and why to use the tool and what benefits it can bring to your course. We're going to spend some time in some how-tos. We're going to do a really quick discussion activity using a Google Doc just to break things up a little bit. We're going to do some work groups so that you guys can choose your adventure. And then we're going to regroup and share for however long we can at the end. And our objectives for today are essentially, to define the Canvas Studio and describe its many applications for instruction and for students, to identify at least one resource, because we want this to be as hands-on as we can. So we want each of you to be able to identify a resource or an assignment or something that you can record. We want you to actually walk away having created something. And then we're going to modify that resource using Canvas Studio. So there's 3 arms and 3 objectives to this. And I believe that Daniel's kicking us off with what is Studio.
All right, so what is Canvas Studio? Well, it's a recording tool, obviously. And
Oops.
Canvas Studio, well, we can jump ahead there too. But many of us, have used the Canvas's previous or existing built-in recording tool, it's pretty rudimentary, right? You click on it, it gives you a little web interface to start to make a recording. You make your recording, and that's sort of it. It's a little bit clunky by modern standards, and there's not much you can do with the recording once you've made it, right? You can embed it in whatever page it was in when you started it. Now, up to now, there's been other tools available like Panopto, for example, which, again, I was pleasantly surprised to discover that Canvas Studio is a lot closer to Panopto as far as a tool in Canvas than it is to its earlier progenitor, the little built-in tool, much more like that. Those of you who've used Screencast-O-Matic before, for example, will know that that's actually sort of what's on the back end of Canvas Studio. So what do I mean by being closer to Panopto? Well, it means there's just much more features to it. So when you're using Canvas Studio, for example, you're making a recording, which you can then, once the recording's finished, you can go in and make some basic edits to it. When you make that recording available to an audience, you can apply analytics to it. You can see who's been viewing what for how long and when and how many times, which can be very useful information in that sort of area. And we'll talk about it more with analytics. I think it's analogous to when we used to give students reading assignments. You didn't quite know if they had done the reading. And similarly now with being able to have students watch a recording, you're able to see, have they been watching it in its entirety? Have they been skipping around inside of it? Have they been not watching it at all? And those things, as you might imagine, correlate to performance pretty consistently. If you see a student who's repeatedly not watching a video, you're almost always going to see in-class performance matching up with that as well. Oops. All right, so that's a quick introduction to it. There's other features as well, and maybe this is even more and critical, is that you can do things like apply quizzes to your recordings as well. So another, even perhaps more important than the analytics, is being able to provide students with prompts while they're watching that video in the form of a quiz. It can be low stakes. The point being here is that you're able to keep students engaged. You're expecting them not only to passively view your video, but also provide some kind of feedback as it moves along. And then last but not least, this tool can also be used with Canvas discussions as well. And students can more easily, I'd say, than in other instances, Panopto being an example, can more easily record their own material and submit that material to you more easily than it's been the case in the past. Okay. So where is Panopto? I wanted to go back real quickly.
Yeah.
Again, Panopto is, and when we actually go to actually do some hands-on, I'll share my screen and show you this, but when you're in Canvas, you'll see there's two locations that say Studio. One is on the actual global navigation column, this green column on the left, and that is think of that as being your personal Canvas studio location. All your recordings are stored there. You can manage and organize them there. Studio, on the other hand, in the second column, which is the course navigation menu, this reflects any Canvas Studio material that's in that course already. So that's a way to be able to see that you've used that material there and you can access it from that location. All right, let's go to the next window. And when to use Studio, you need to ask yourself some questions. Do I wish to produce something rapidly? And Studio is very good for that. Being able to fire up your webcam or upload your video. Is there a potential to reuse the material you're creating? And this is one area where I really think Canvas Studio shines, is that, again, you're sort of developing your library within Canvas. It's easy to get to, and you can take a single video, you can create multiple quizzes that are associated with that video, as opposed to having one quiz that's now you have to maybe duplicate the video and create a new quiz for that kind of material is there. And similarly, if you want to utilize features such as quizzes or analytics, while Panopto has that as well, Canvas Studio, to my thinking, is much more accessible in that regard. And then last but not least, do I wish for my students to submit media as well? And sure, there are other avenues they can submit media with. The simple Canvas media recording tool, or Panopto for that matter, but I think that Canvas Studio, again, really shines as far as ease of use and minimizing the amount of clicking out or seemingly clicking away from Canvas in order to get that material in. All right, so the next slide is when not to use it. And as I mentioned a moment ago, um, this is largely around the area of editing. If you anticipate making extensive edits to a recording you're making, you may want to consider using a different tool such as Panopto. And some examples of that would be doing things like merging multiple recordings into one. Panopto, one thing I'll give it credit for sure is that the way that it integrates with PowerPoint is actually pretty convenient and nice. You know, being able to launch your PowerPoint presentation from within the Panopto recorder, for example, if you're using that tool, is pretty convenient. And again, it's the sort of post-production, if you will, once the video's finished. If you're wanting to go back and do an extensive amount of manipulation to it, Panopto is probably a better platform for that. And as I said to my colleagues a little bit earlier, having said that, to my way of thinking, that's a little bit nichey. A lot of us produce our video, we have a minimal amount of editing that we're going to need to be doing to it. So in most cases, and again, why I'm excited about Canvas Studio, is that outside of this need to do extensive editing, Canvas Studio is a great choice to make. Right. Next. Okay. So creating a studio video. In most respects, this is best practice in general for creating recordings. So first and foremost, it's having your material prepared, knowing what you're going to say. And what's going to next impact that is the format. Is your recording going to be extemporaneous? Have it, for example, or being formal? Canvas Studio lends itself to being very easily firing up that recording and saying what you're thinking about. So if you're someone, for example, maybe you've had a face-to-face presentation in your class, or you've had a great moment, as we were talking about earlier, about sort of walking down the street and a great idea pops into your mind. Camtasia Studio, or excuse me, Canvas Studio is a great platform to come in and very quickly create that recording and get it posted and put into place. Um, Having said that, though, if what you're trying to do is a bit more formal, perhaps you've got something of a prepared lecture, for example, that you're wanting to make a recording of, that's going to entail some other considerations. Not least of all, it's really the length of your recording. And if we pretty much agree that if your recording goes beyond, say, 10 minutes, everybody sort of see that as being a reasonable cutoff point. If you're going beyond 10 minutes, you really want to think about your presentation in terms of episodes or segments. And again, if you have a presentation that you've been giving for quite some time and it's almost to the point where you can sit down and just 1, 2, 3, go and do that presentation, but it's a 45-minute presentation. Again, that may be a consideration you want to make. A really important one is, how do I take that presentation and break it into smaller components? It has everything to do with retention for your students. If the presentation is very, very long, it requires one extensive sitting, the likelihood of their being able to retain that material drops dramatically after, 7 to 10 minutes. So putting it into bite-sized pieces is good. I mentioned here selecting the tool, and which seems kind of funny because aren't we talking about Studio right now? But one of the things that Canvas Studio allows you to do is upload video to it. So perhaps you're someone who uses Camtasia, for example, as I put here, and that's something you're comfortable working in. You could go ahead and make your recording using that other tool, assuming you're savvy in that tool, and then go ahead and upload that into Canvas Studio. Why would you do that? Why would you do it for two different tools? Well, it has to do with being comfortable. I'm a really big proponent of work with whatever is comfortable for you. Camtasia is an environment you like to use. Go ahead and use that, and then know that you can leverage the features that Canvas Studio has by just taking that finished recording and uploading it in. And by features, I mean analytics and being able to use quizzes and so on. And then last but really not least, when you're making a recording, is the location, the sound, light, and environment. You know, Ironically, in a way, a video recording where the video quality is not so great is less of a concern. This is probably stating the obvious for most of you, is sound. If the sound quality is poor, that's the real showstopper. So one of the things I really emphasize for folks is, before you sit down to make your recording, regardless of the tool that you're using, make sure that you sound okay. Make some sample recordings. Figure out if that microphone is either too close or too far away for your audience. Just simple things like that. And then with lighting, lighting can be pretty forgiving, except if you've got, for example, the classic bright window behind you, in which case it starts to look like a ransom video with you in, you know, uh, in shadow like that. So again, it's fairly important. I think our audiences are not expecting, um, Hollywood production values in their recordings. The students aren't expecting that, and you shouldn't expect that of yourself either. In fact, I'm one of the things we talked about a little earlier is this idea of authenticity being born from imperfection. So if you stumble over a word or have to repeat yourself, don't feel like, cut, start over again. Go ahead and feel comfortable continuing on with that. In the reality is, I'm sure in the course of my speaking with all of us right now, for example, we're all used to that, receiving information, having the speaker in a live situation have to kind of pause and maybe repeat themselves or something like that. And I really do believe that in a classroom academic environment in particular, audiences appreciate and are certainly tolerant of that as well. All right.
Jackie, did you
With
have a question
Yeah.
before we go further?
And I might just be stealing the thunder of somebody, so if so, I apologize. When you were talking, Daniel, about using a tool you're familiar with, such as Camtasia, which I have no idea what it is, but say I recorded something to that and then I uploaded it to Studio, then is the purpose of that so that within that course, the students would be able to access it because I have it in Studio, a format they're able to utilize, and the same then would be reversed for students. If they're not comfortable with Studio, but they're used to Camtasia, this would be the bridge for them to use something to record an assignment that they've been asked to do.
Yeah, they would really what's ultimately you're doing is you're creating a video file. And I used Camtasia as an example. So you've got this video file, and when you upload that file into Studio, the point of that is that you're then able to get all the capabilities, all the features applied to that video that would have been applied if you had, say, used Studio to make the original recording in the first place. And that would even include something I neglected to mention is closed captions, for example. That's one of the features inside of Canvas Studio. So if you uploaded that video file that you created somewhere else, downloaded from somewhere else, and uploaded that into Canvas Studio, then those features would be able to be applied to that recording that you've uploaded.
Including closed captioning into Arabic, Portuguese, Chinese, several, I think there's several dozen languages now, which is really cool.
Yeah, that kind of blew me away when I saw that list.
Yeah, me too. And it's all at the click of a button and free and about 80 to 90% accurate. So unless you're doing, unless you have a super thick accent or have a really jargon-laden course, it will do a nice job for you. So a lot of the things that Daniel touched on, this is just a little graphic that we created for you. Basically, it's the do's and don'ts. And I'm not going to repeat the ones that Daniel mentioned, but I feel like it's really important that you know your audience before you start to record. Think about who you're talking to. If you're talking to, a presentation of a national board, you're going to have a different tone. You're going to have a different feeling to your video. And that's okay. That's actually, you should have multiple voices that you can use, right? You're not in this one lane and you have to stay in that lane. I encourage you guys to practice using different personas. There are times when I'll use my cheerleading voice. There are other times when I use my emotional support animal voice. And then there are other times where I use my I know more about this topic than you do. This is what you need to know voice. So, know your audience and use it. Being patient, by that I just mean don't freak out if at the first moment it doesn't work. Just think it through, and most importantly, reach out for help if you need it. We're all here. We can all help you. Practicing cannot be understated, right? You cannot go in and you can, right? If you're just doing a quick extemporaneous 2 to 3 minute, this is what I was thinking as I was walking down the street, then you don't need to practice that. If you're doing an actual presentation, you should actually time it for yourself and know how long you're going to be talking, etc. Checking your audio, your background. I will check your background, folks, because we've all been on those Zoom meetings where they had things that weren't good in their background, right? Y'all read the news. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Scary stuff. Anyway, so check your background, make sure that whatever's behind you is not embarrassing to you. Chunking it, Daniel talked about that at length, and I'm in full agreement with it. Short chunks, you can always put them together later. At the very least, you want to create breaks in your presentations so that people can think about what you've just presented to them. I'm a big proponent about getting excited and letting that excitement show. You guys love this stuff. You teach it. You live it. You theoretically, at least, you want to share this information. So let that excitement show. And because I guarantee you that that's one of the things that carries through to your students, even if it's in a static video. And I keep it short on there twice because I meant it. I mean, that was intentional in terms of what not to do. Jumping all over the place. I used to be one, and I still have to take my hands off the mouse because I talk with my hands. And so I do a lot of this, and that's really distracting if you're talking in a video. So I actually now take my hands off my mouse and put them on my desktop. I speak way too quickly, but then I don't want to slow down and sound like I'm monotone either. So find your happy medium. Don't read your slides. Stop it. Just stop it. If you do that, I don't think anybody in this room does. But if you see anybody doing it, just walk up behind them and whack them upside the head and say, no, don't do it. Daniel mentioned the Hollywood production. We don't need to worry about that so much. And remembering that we're just an email away. Some do's and don'ts for you. And then next up, we have some really quick copyright issues. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. Fair use protects us for the most part. However, we have to be careful about the 4 principles of fair use. That is the purpose and character of what your use is, the nature of the copyrighted work, the amount and substantiality of the portion, and the effect of the use on the potential market. The last one is probably the most important. If you're sharing PDFs of something in your video, and that person then is deprived of the income that having the students buy that would have created, you are not covered by copyright. All right, so just be mindful of what images you grab, what things you put in your video, and know that especially in this day and age where it's so easy to track people down and figure things out. I mean, it's pretty scary how quickly things can go bad. And there have been several cases of, big fines for universities. And I know, I think it was University of California at Berkeley ended up taking their entire video library down because they had some copyright issues in there, and they got dinged. They had to take the whole thing down and redo every video in the place. So something to think about. Laura, tag, you're it.
All right. So I'm going to be talking a little bit more at length. I know Daniel mentioned this, but I'm going to be talking more at length about adding interactivity to your Canvas studio videos and the kinds of interactivity you can add. So we're going to be focusing on the 3 key types of interactions that you can add to your Canvas studio video, and those are annotations, time-based comments or discussions essentially, and quizzes. So Peg, I'm actually going to share my Canvas studio library and jump right into it and show you guys. Thank you. All right, can you all see my screen? Oh, not yet. I got to click that share button. Forgot about that. Okay, can you all see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So I have already added, as you can see, several videos to my studio library. This is essentially the page that you'll see when you click on that studio button from your global navigation bar. You'll see my library, and essentially any studio video that you've created or added. As Daniel mentioned, you can record studio videos, you can do a screen capture, a webcam capture, or you can add pre-existing videos. You can paste to a YouTube or Vimeo link, or you can even upload a video file. So any type of video file, again, is, well, not any type, but again, the kinds of video files that you would likely use, you can upload them or link them from within your library. So I already have a few here for the purposes of this demonstration, and I'm going to say you want to add a video on intubation. So I added this one. This is a YouTube video, which I added merely by clicking again on that add button and then pasting a link to the video here and clicking add video. Again, as Daniel and Peg mentioned, you can record directly from here. You can record your face and then add interactions to that. But for the purposes of this demo, again, we're using a pre-existing video. So I mentioned the 3 types of interactions. They are annotations, time-based comments, and quizzes. Once you have your video added and you want to add those elements, you see those 3 dots, right? Whenever you're in Canvas and you see 3 dots, always click on it to see what it can do, right? Because likely that's going to be your answer. So I'm clicking on these 3 dots and I see these options. I can add a quiz, and I've already added one called How to Intubate. I can annotate the video. I can share the video, or I can move it, or I can delete it. So for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to walk you through the steps by which you add individual questions or annotations. We can really do that in the lab or work group portion of the session. But I am going to show you the ones that I already set up so you can kind of see what it looks like, right? And think about how you might use this video or your own video. Oh goodness, are you serious? It didn't work. Let's try it again. I'm not sure what's happening on my end.
We've all been there, not to worry.
I've never seen that error page before.
I think that's why it was on the do list, patience.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Oh my goodness. Okay, and now I see a blank page. Or it's trying to reload. Oh, here we go, hopefully. Okay, so I'm going to click on view and go into my video. Let's hope it shows me. Let's hope. Okay, so anyway, this is what you're going to see while it loads. You're going to see the video here, and then you're going to see some options. Details about your video that could include, your description. Since I copied this from YouTube, it's going to copy the video description that YouTube provided. Comments, this is where we get into your time-based comments, which I'll talk about in a second. Insights, which Daniel will talk about. This is where you get some data on student understanding or student engagement with the video, and then captions, right, where you can add any number of captions. As this is a YouTube video, it already has those captions though. So I've already added an annotation, and I'm just going to briefly play it so you can see what that annotation would look like if you were to play this video. I'm going to go to that point. You can see that when you add an interaction, like an annotation or a quiz question, it shows you in the timeline where that is. So you can enable or disable those points in the timeline. Say you really want to force students to watch the whole thing and not just click forward to the quiz questions. If you hide these points from the timeline, they can't find them without actually watching it. So that's helpful, right? If you're really trying to measure their engagement with the video. So this is an annotation. So essentially what that is, and I'm just going to let it play, is a title, some sort of description. We'll see if it starts playing, and perhaps a link. So say in a video, you guys can't hear that, right?
No, you got to click the share computer sound when you share.
Okay, it's okay. I don't need you to see it. I just wanted you to see the annotation pop up. But do you see how here I have a little annotation? It says, what is pulse oximetry? And there's a link to it. So you could add a definition or a link to a page, or further information should they want to continue to explore that. You can also add quiz questions. So say you want to create a knowledge check quiz to test their understanding of the material, maybe before they launch the video, and then after, to measure and see, what they've learned, and if they've learned or achieved the objectives you want them to. So if you, through that knowledge check, if you add that knowledge check question, it will again automatically show at that point in the video where you've dropped it in. And then the work groups will show you how to do that if you're interested in doing so. So I'm just going to let this play so you can see it. Oh, that's my discussion question. Do you see how the discussion kind of popped up? That was not my quiz question. So discussions will also, or comments, will also show as points in the timeline. And you see I've added a question at that particular point in the timeline where he's talking about Miller blades, asking them to talk about or discuss when they might use a Miller blade for intubation, right? So you can create, if any of you have used VoiceThread before, you can create a discussion around topics in a particular point in the video. And then lastly, you can also create quizzes. And you have to actually, as I showed you in my library, you have to actually create your quiz directly in Canvas. So where it says create quiz or add quiz, in Studio, where it says add a quiz, you would create it here. And then once you add it to your course, you would essentially activate it for that course. So I've already done that for a sample course where I've added a quiz, a Canvas Studio quiz to a page. So in this case, I have a quiz. Oh my goodness, it's not working, but I have a quiz, added on intubation, and I've embedded it on this Canvas page. So if it were showing correctly and you were taking it, you could get data on how well students answered those questions as they watched the video. Also, sorry about the tech issues here, guys. You could also, and here is an embedded discussion, a Canvas Studio video using discussion, where you've added that to the course and people could start interacting and responding at those time-based intervals, right? So let's see if it works this time. All right, so you see how this question pops up here at a certain point. We have a question about, maneuvers for when intubating someone. That would automatically pop up, pause the video, force them to answer it, and then they could continue along until you have the next question posed to them. And then you would get their answers or results in your quiz results tab afterwards. So you could see not only how students are engaging with a page, but also how well they're understanding the material that you are giving them. So introducing to them. So it gives you really real-time data and information about student comprehension, which is incredibly useful and quite easy to do once you get the hang of it. So I'll stop there because I know we are behind time, and let it go back to Peg and Daniel.
One quick question came up, Laura. Is it possible to assign points to those knowledge checks or other student interactions with the video, and do those go into the grade book?
Only if you correlate it with a particular assignment. So any of the actual studio quizzes or discussions do not, students do not complete them for a grade, and they do not automatically push to your grade book. However, if you were to add a studio video or interaction to a Dropbox assignment or a discussion and set up points for that, then yes, you could grade them on that interaction.
Great. Were there any other questions before we move on to the next? Okay. All right. So one of the other ways that you can use Studio is that you can ask students to do an assignment using Studio or some other video platform, right, to create an MP4, and then they can upload to Studio as well. One of the nice things about Studio is we don't have a storage limit that we know of. Maybe we do. We haven't been told yet. So right now we're running with the assumption that, let's go. So students can upload their own videos as well, which is it's a fun way to engage students. Students love making videos. I mean, look at TikTok, look at, all these other, if they can do a TikTok video, they can do a Studio video. So, it's super easy. The thing you have to ask yourself, again, there's some considerations. Why are you having them do it? Does it support your student learning objectives? And this is really a key component for every assessment that you create. How does it support my student learning objectives? Why am I having them do that? And then other things to consider, especially from a DEI perspective, is, what's the accessibility to these tools that my students have? Can they access do they have enough bandwidth to be able to do a video? Do they have a camera where they can do a video, or are they using, an old phone that doesn't have a video camera anymore? So think about those things as you're creating these assignments and have a backup plan. I'm not saying don't do them. In fact, the opposite. I'm saying do them anyway. But I always put in a line that, you know, if for any reason you feel that you might be unable to accomplish this assignment, please reach out to me. We'll find something else. I always want to give them an out. I want to give them a couple of different ways, because I don't want to embarrass anybody ever again. Finally, you want to give them a list of the different tools that they can use. I always tell people, use, like Daniel said, use whatever you're comfortable with. I don't care. As long as it comes to me in either through Studio or as an MP4, I'll be able to figure it out. And if you as a user don't have that knowledge and don't have the aren't sure about how to manipulate videos so that you can watch them regardless of how they're submitted, reach out to one of us again, because most of us we either know how to convert files or we have different tools that we can use to make it available to you. So don't let the tools be a barrier to the function. Don't let form overrule functionality. And then finally, the biggest piece for me personally is when you're writing, how many of you write instructions or in your assignment boxes, put in something like submit the assignment here by Friday, and that's it? I mean, come on, you can be honest. I'm guilty. I've done that. I'm here to suggest that it's so much more important, especially when you're asking students to do something a little bit higher level, that you tell them exactly what you're looking for. I want a 3 to 5 minute video using this outline with this kind of detail. So answering these 3 questions, at least in the beginning of the class. As you move through the class, you can be a little bit more free with the, as they begin to learn your style, you can potentially loosen up on some of that, but especially in the beginning, because 9 times out of 10, what happens is you have 20 students, each one interprets your directions differently. You get 20 different assignments and none of them are what you were looking for. I mean, I lived that nightmare. And then all of a sudden I realized that, if I want a specific thing, I should ask for that specific thing. As soon as I started putting in directions of what I wanted, all of a sudden my problems went away. And I realized it wasn't them, it was me. I love, Ginny, thank you for adding this good old fashioned template. Absolutely. And refer them to reading the rubric prior to starting the assignment in red, bold letters. Love it. And of course, to that end, you need to have your rubrics written. So if you haven't done that yet, I think Branka is our resident rubric expert. She loves rubrics. She lives to write them. I think she's even on the call today. So she can claim that or not. Let's see. But yeah, so purpose, accessibility tools, and instructions. And Daniel's going to give us a great online demo of some of the, I didn't even do a quick, hold on, Daniel, I'm going to keep it for one more second because I want to show actually how you build that assignment.
Oh, please do. That would be great.
Yeah, sorry about that. So if I'm going into an assignment, right, and I'm just going to add an assignment, and you can do this from within the module or you can do it on the assignments page, either way. I'm just going to create a dummy assignment. I'm going to put in the title. I'm going to put in my very, very, very detailed instructions here. I'm going to give it points, however many I want. It's going to be in the assignment group of, I don't know, we'll just call it a project. We're going to display the grade as whatever we want it to do. Remember that we have the ability to do complete, incomplete. So if you don't want to create a lot of stress on them, they can just do complete, incomplete. You can still give them feedback, but it doesn't have to be, it doesn't even have to go to the grade if you don't want it to. And then it comes down here. Sometimes this is on defaulted to no submission, right? So you're going to, under submission type, you're going to want to click on that drop down and you're going to have them do online. And then their online options are media recordings. And then once they do that, and once you click that, it will automatically give them the option of uploading to either Canvas Studio or to Canvas Studio, sorry. And then just carry on as you would with any other assignment. Any questions about that? Does that make sense to everybody? Do you want to see it from a student's point of view? That might be helpful too.
So Peg, real quick, if you had not checked the media option, but just had submission online, does that hinder their ability to upload?
They wouldn't have any options displayed. So it won't let you, you have to click something. Okay. So, I mean, theoretically, most of us check file uploads regularly. And if you do have that one, they could upload an MP4. The downside of that is that counts against your storage space within your course. You don't want to upload stray MP4s all over the place, because that'll bloat your course and it'll make it logy and slow. So you're much better to load it up to this streaming studio so that it doesn't impact your course. But that was a great question.
Thanks.
And let's just go to the student view of this particular, hopefully it's published. Of course I don't. Let's go here. Let's see, is this course published first of all? Let's go back to our assignment. Which one was it?
The assignment wasn't published. Oh,
I'm
no,
sorry,
that's
what?
Cool. Oh, I thought the assignment wasn't published.
It
the
wasn't.
ASDF at the top.
It's at the top. Is this the right one? I have the unfortunate tendency to name everything ASDF. Okay, yeah, we do have media recordings there. So I will go ahead and that one's published. We go ahead and save it. Let's see if I can look at it now from a student point of view. No, not. Good Lord. One must wait for the page to settle before clicking. So this is what the student sees when you click these different options of how they can submit, right? And so they can either, they can submit a text, something right in the text field. They can upload media files here. And again, it'll allow them to record their own media or upload media. They can upload something or they can do it right in Studio if you give them that option, which then brings them right to Studio. It's this section in the center of the page is essentially linked to this area over here for each person. So each person has a Studio account with its own storage. Does that make sense to everybody?
So how did Studio show up in there?
By how I set my settings in the, so when I went to edit, and I allowed media recordings, it's going to automatically give that option.
Okay.
Right? A quick plug for Turnitin, even though we're not talking about Turnitin today, and I am out of here. Who's next? Who we got? Who's coming up?
Do a little demo of analytics on screen, just to
Oh,
see
that's right. So I'm not
that
sharing
looks like.
anymore. Thank you.
Yeah, and not, I'm sorry to interrupt, Daniel. I just want to be sure that we have enough time for people to get into work groups and do some actual studio creation of their own. So if we could, I think maybe we'll jump ahead to the work groups after you do your bit, so that we can break out in those breakout rooms and get started. That'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. Laura,
Thanks for
how
keeping
much
us
time
honest.
should I? Yeah, definitely.
Can you like just a couple minutes just show them what it looks like essentially? I mean, I think
that
if
works
you don't
fine.
mind, unless someone in the room would really like to talk about it more at length, then I think that's totally up to attendees.
No, I can do a very quick drive-by, as it were, of that. No problem.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you
appreciate
for.
it.
So let's go and share my screen. All right. So right now we're in Google Chrome. Everybody seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So in this particular case, I have I've gone ahead and placed a video, embedded a video into this module. And I've had my students all have had a chance to take a look at it. I'll go to Insights. So I'm looking at the video itself. I'll go to Insights here. And then I'll be able to see, and this is obviously a very simple example, but it just gives you some idea of what kind of information is being provided. Right at the top, it's telling me there's been a total of 7 views, a total of 17 minutes of that have been viewed, and then 6 unique viewers, which is kind of cool because it's basically telling me that of these 6 people, at least one of them actually went back and viewed it more than once, which is kind of nice. Obviously, in a real class situation, these numbers would hopefully be a lot larger than that. But coming down here is where we get some more granular data, right? So we're able to see, for example, for this one sample student, We can see that this student watched the first, few seconds, then skipped over and watched the balance of it. And similarly, as I go down to each student, I can see that's what's happening as well. The student was skipping around inside of the recording. Likewise here. And just very, very simple information, but it gives you a clear idea. This student actually watched the whole thing. And there. Now I can also download a CSV of this, which is, the information is fairly rudimentary. It's really just showing you the completion rate. It'll give you a list of each of your students and show you how much of the video what percentage they actually viewed. All right, so there's that one. And then I'm going to really quickly go over and show you the results from a quiz, or maybe not. Let's see if I got an assignment here to show you. So add an assignment very fast, and we'll call it sim. We'll give that 50 points. And I'm going to come down here, and for submission type, I'm going to do an external tool. I'm going to click here, find studio, and as luck would have it, I already have a recording made with a quiz associated with it. And there we go. And I've got an embedded quiz already there, and embed, and select. And I'll save and publish. All right, so I have this quiz here already located. I'll go ahead and emulate a student just for the moment so we can see what happens. Assignments. Go to that sim. Started. And I'm just going to jump to the first quiz question. I'll jump to the next one. And then do the last one. And I'll do all right, and I'll submit my quiz. And now I can come back and see the quiz results. And of course, they're not there yet because, okay, there we go. So we can see the student got 75%, the amount of time that was spent, the number of attempts that were made. And then actually a breakdown of the responses as well. And just like any Canvas assignment, it's a quiz, but you'll notice when you're embedding video in as a quiz, you actually create a Canvas assignment for that. And that will of course show up in the gradebook as well. So I wanted to jump, that's my quick overview of insights and quiz results as well. And you can see in this case as well, I'm actually seeing the insights, the viewer information as well for that quiz. All right.